Come straight to me. Come straight to me. No musical opening. This is way too important. I cannot believe more people are not talking about the most devastating news to come out last week. What the heck are we doing? Play the clip.
Sure, Mika. Look, the whole issue of global warming should be very front and center. It's an existential threat that we face as not just a country, but as a world. Obviously, from rising sea levels, we have lost Arctic ash.
Play it again so people get how serious this is.
Obviously, from rising sea levels, we have lost Arctic ash.
I don't know. Maybe some people don't care about the Arctic ass. But if we lose the Arctic ass, why can't we lose the African ass, the European ass, and God forbid, the South American ass? Shakira, J-Lo, Salma Hayek? I, for one, think... What? What's that? What do you mean he meant ice? Who the heck cares about Arctic ice? Welcome to the Comparison Group Podcast. Today is April 30th, 2024. Ooh, the next episode, my very first guest. The very first guest on the Comparison Group Podcast. Are you excited? Everyone wants to know, who will it be? Will it be former President Barack Obama? Will it be the world famous celebrity, actor Tom Cruise? Will it be billionaire celebrity Oprah Winchester? Oprah Winfrey? I swear, if I met Oprah, I would pretend not to know her name just to ruin her year. I can't stand Oprah. Nasty dogs. Will it be two guests? Perhaps Johnny Depp and Amber Heard sitting down for a face-to-face emotional reunion for the first time since the breakup? I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to fit all those people into this closet. So you'll just have to tune in to see, I guess. Next episode. But here's the agenda for this episode. I got some clips I really want to play. I've had them for a while. I want to talk about Trump in court. I really don't, but I guess I should. With all seriousness, are you really closely following this trial? Do you understand why we need a trial? Me neither. It's not that interesting because there's no video or even audio inside the courtroom. But all right, I'll talk Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, since we now have the funding that got passed. I said I was going to talk about this rezoning of higher income neighborhoods to allow for the building of affordable housing. Oh boy. So let me start here. No, you know what? No. Do I have your permission to not really talk about Trump and his legal woes? Do I have your permission to not talk about it? Thank you. There are plenty of places where you're getting wall-to-wall coverage if you're interested in what's going on in this Trump, whatever you want to call it, case. They say, don't call it hush money. That's not right. It's not a hush money case. It's a campaign finance, whatever. All I know is putting Donald Trump on trial is like putting a tornado on trial. We all see the evidence of the tornado. We all know the tornado did it. Oh, yeah, but come on, Comparison Group guy. A tornado has no conscience. A tornado doesn't know right from wrong. Yeah, like I said, putting Trump on trial is like putting a tornado on trial. So let's just skip Trump in court and move on. Let's move on to anything else. I'll say this. If everyone is wrong, then nobody is right. If everybody is wrong, then nobody is right. I think I'm saying that right. I heard it. It's a lyric from a song that I heard. And I said, it struck me. I said, oh, yeah, if everyone's wrong, then nobody's right. I said, that's true. If you think everyone you disagree with is wrong about everything, well, then you're wrong, because that would make you right about everything. And no one can be right about everything. So you're wrong and they're wrong for the same reason, because no one can. That made more sense when I said it in my head instead of saying it out loud. But I don't know how out of it I need to pretend to be on this show to get people to listen. Just exactly how oblivious do people want me or anyone to be, or how much do you want people to ignore, to let slide, so I don't upset or offend or cause someone to, God forbid, think about something, to think a little bit more on something? How oblivious do you have to act? Heaven forbid someone should have to listen closely to something. I just recently had someone complain to me about my show because they said they had to listen too closely to what I was saying. I wish I was making that up, but I'm not. Somebody said, I got to go back and listen to your show again. I'm missing stuff. I got to listen too closely to it. Sorry. But when I say you have to be oblivious, when I hear nonsense on conservative media, when I hear nonsense on liberal media, when I see nonsense on social media, I have to point it out, regardless what side it comes from. Don't I? Don't we? But if I do, if you do, some people will stop talking to you. And some people will turn me off. People won't listen. So how much do you have to let slide so that people won't just cut you out of their lives and stop talking to you and think, oh, you're one of those people? Again, whether it's on the left or on the right, how much do you have to let slide and ignore and be oblivious to? Listen to this clip.
I'm hoping that this judge makes the right decision. I'm hoping these jurors can come in and be unbiased, and we'll let this case go forward in a swift manner that allows President Trump to get back on the campaign trail. Americans deserve to hear from their candidates, and the Democrats and the activists are using this trial to derail him, to keep him in court instead of out talking to Americans about what their real concerns are.
I just want to say for the record, there's absolutely no evidence that President Biden is involved in this. This is a case that is being brought in the state of New York by the Manhattan DA.
And that's what I think is remarkable, is that if you look at President Biden and what he's done and what his son has done, and the fact that they are not being prosecuted for some of their crimes
that has nothing to do
really
with this.
Kind of unprecedented.
That has nothing to do with this. So my question is
true, completely different.
There's no evidence has been used for 6 years, and yet conservatives and Republicans keep getting nailed by this stupid argument. There is a very simple comeback to this. And the comeback is, are you confusing evidence with conclusions? Because there's certainly a ton of evidence that this is politically motivated. Let's go through it. You may draw a different conclusion, but you saying there's no evidence is absurd.
Okay, stay with me here, because I had to do some serious editing to chop this down for time. But essentially, you got Kristi Noem on with Dana Bash on CNN saying, this stuff is politically motivated against Trump. It's directed by Biden and the Democrats. There's two separate legal standards in this country. Dana Bash says there's no evidence of that. There's no evidence of that. This guy says we got to get better at answering that whole no evidence thing. There's plenty of evidence. Don't confuse evidence with conclusions. Okay? Here's the problem. Here's the thing I can't be oblivious to when I listen to media and not point out to try and make people happy and listen to my podcast. He never gives any evidence. You would have thought after what he said, he would have said, now here's a half dozen examples of evidence. He never did. He never gave any evidence. He said, there's a ton of evidence out there. What's wrong with these people? Don't confuse evidence with conclusion. There's a ton of evidence. And then he never gave any. He gave one example of saying the district attorney used to work in the Biden administration it was basically, he said, somebody in Washington, D.C. had worked for somebody else in Washington, D.C. at one point. That was his evidence. That this was all being orchestrated by Joe Biden. That this person, who's a district attorney now, worked in Biden's administration at some point. I'm quite sure there are probably dozens upon dozens of people who fit that description, worked in some administration, and now work in a different job, whether it be in a legal profession or otherwise. But even if you go with that, that's one example. It's one example. And I was waiting. I was like, oh, good. Here we go. Here we go. This is why I listen. This is why I listen, try and listen to everything. even things I don't agree with, because now he's going to tell me something. I'm going to hear something I ain't going to hear over there on that liberal channel. He's going to give me the evidence that this is orchestrated by Joe Biden. I've got my pen and my pencil, my pen and pad ready. Give it to me. And then he never did. And that's pretty typical. It's pretty typical. I think we all know that. If we're not being oblivious, I think we all know that. We always are told, here it comes. I'm getting ready to give it to you. Here's the information. Here's what you need to know. Here's the evidence. And then we never really get it. It's always coming. We never get it. And that would be okay. Doing a show, informational, entertainment, media as it exists today type show. But the glaring, obvious thing that you just can't get around is all the things that Donald Trump is charged with. There's overwhelming evidence he did it. He did something. Draw a different conclusion if you want. Draw a different conclusion as to whether or not he should be put in jail for it or be held responsible in some sort of a way for it, whether it be having to pay millions of dollars in a judgment. Draw a different conclusion if you want, but the evidence is overwhelming that he did it. He did have all those boxes down at Mar-a-Lago. He did have sex with Stormy Daniels. I think Donald Trump is still the only one in the country that thinks he didn't. He did have sex with Stormy Daniels. He did then try and pay her off along with other people to stay quiet about it. There's overwhelming evidence he did all of these things. That's the difference. He did get on the phone and say, find me 11,000 votes in Georgia. He did. We have the tape. We have the audio. We know he did these things. But when it comes to Joe Biden, sure, you can say whatever you want to say and say there's all the evidence in the world. But so I say that to not be oblivious to what I hear. And I tick off people, I guess, on the right. Don't want to listen. But hang on. I don't stop there. I make sure I tick off people on the left, too. Listen to this. This is a clip of President Joe Biden saying that he proposed and negotiated and agreed to the border security bill. Listen to this.
Just this year I proposed and negotiated and agreed to the strongest border security bill this country has ever seen. It was bipartisan. It should have been included in this bill. And I'm determined to get it done for the American people.
What's wrong with him? What is wrong with him? Has he gotten into Hunter's crack again? Seriously, what is wrong with him? He did not propose the border security bill. We know that because it wasn't that long ago that we can remember everyone on the left flipping out when the Republicans said, we're not going to fund Ukraine and Israel, I believe too. We're not going to give you the funding unless we do something on the border. That's how the border bill came about. Joe Biden wasn't sitting around and said, hey, you know what? We should do something about the border. No, they were all angry. They were angry that the Republicans would dare to tie funding for the wars in Israel and Ukraine to border security. They were very upset about that. It was proposed by the Republicans, not Joe Biden. And negotiating, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong on this one, but I don't think he had anything to do with negotiating the bill. It was a group of Republican Republican lawmakers and Democratic lawmakers. I think that was the whole point, making sure it was bipartisan and negotiated by Republicans and Democrats and leaving the White House out of it. I think that was the whole point, to get it done. What's wrong with him? It wasn't that long ago. Now all of a sudden I proposed it, I negotiated, and I'd agreed to it. Really? Joe, what was wrong with the truth? What was wrong with the truth? You guys came up with a strong bipartisan border security bill, and Donald Trump came along and killed it. What was wrong with that? Wasn't the truth working just fine for you? Why'd you have to switch it to you did it all now? It doesn't make sense. Am I supposed to ignore what I just watched play out for the past several months? Am I supposed to be oblivious to not upset people on the left and tell you sometimes Joe just is out of his mind? Fee, fi, fo, fum, we can't be this dumb. We can't be. Knick-knack, paddywhack, give a dog a bone. What about when I see something silly on social media? What if I see something silly on social media, whether it's liberal silliness or conservative silliness? Mark Cuban, the guy from Shark Tank, the wealthy billionaire entrepreneur, seems to be liberal, maybe even progressive, given the way he talks. I don't know. He tweeted out, he says he was happy and proud to pay $276 million in taxes on April 15th. You get me? Happy and proud to pay $250 million to the IRS on April 15th. Let's give this a quick listen.
You may be annoyed about paying taxes. Billionaire Mark Cuban says he's happy to pay the $275.9 million he owes for 2023. I pay what I owe, Cuban wrote on social media site X on Sunday. This country has done so much for me. I'm proud to pay my taxes every single year. Cuban confirmed with CNBC Make It on Monday that his $275.9 million tax bill was wired today. We only get to be entrepreneurs and enjoy the freedoms we have because of the men and women who dedicate their lives to protecting our country, he tells CNBC Make It. They deserve every penny they get and my taxes go to support them. Cuban, who is also one of the stars on ABC's Shark Tank, has an estimated net worth of $5.4 billion and says his tax bill is almost all long-term capital gains, which almost certainly triggered a federal long-term capital gains tax of 20%. Cuban declined to confirm which assets triggered capital gains taxes, or whether it was related to his partial $3.5 billion sale of the Dallas Mavericks, which was approved in December 2023. Long-term capital gains.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. He declined to comment on whether or not that high tax bill had something to do with him selling his NBA team, the Dallas Mavericks, who just won the NBA championship, and so are worth as much as they're ever going to be. Sold them for $3.5 billion. Okay, but set that aside, and I apologize for the AI voice. That was the best clip I could find for the story. But set that aside, and set aside the obvious humble brag that he just had to take to social media to tell you how much he was paying in taxes. Set that aside. But he's happy and proud. Happy and proud to pay this $276 million to the IRS. Well, good for him. Good for him. To me, saying you're happy and proud to pay $276 million to the IRS is like saying you're happy and proud to donate $276 million to rename the University of Southern California O.J. Simpson University. As stupid as it sounds, there are probably some people out there going, oh, Mark Cuban, you're a wonderful guy. But most people would say, you realize you're about to piss away $276 million, don't you? I mean, come on. Come on. Mark Cuban is not a stupid man. He's not stupid, but he's a sucker. And we're all suckers if we're going to sit here and act as if his $276 million goes to our men and women in the military. We would all be thrilled to pay our taxes if we thought that, if we thought our money was going to them. But no, a pittance of what the government collects in taxes actually goes to our men and women in the military. That's the crime. And even the money that does go to necessary, important things like infrastructure or education or our defense or assistance for people who deserve it, like seniors or veterans or people with special needs, even when the money goes to those programs, they're full of waste, fraud, and abuse. We know that. We all know that. Raise your hand if you work somewhere or you have worked somewhere in the past where they hang those federal information notices that are required by law, usually in the break room. You know, the information about discrimination in employment or the minimum wage or workman's compensation, all that. You know the new one that the government has to hang up now, or the government is sending out that businesses have to hang up now? And you know the new notice that's going up in places of business? And notice that it is a crime to sell your EBT card, your food stamps card. It's a notice to let people know it's a crime to sell that card. How much of a problem must this have grown to if the federal government is mandating and printing notices to be hung in places of business? Because people are selling their food stamp cards. I don't think you have to be a genius to figure out if people are selling their food stamp card, it means they don't need that food stamp card. And yet, we keep increasing the amount of benefits for food stamps. We've been increasing the benefits, even as the government is having to print notices saying, don't sell these cards. What? What? Can we stop pretending to be oblivious on this issue? No, everyone doesn't just hate paying taxes. I mean, no one really likes to pay taxes, I don't think. But it's not that people just hate paying taxes. They hate what the government does with the money once they get it. That's what people hate. I mean, can you imagine? Just imagine. Get your house in order. Get your house. Don't come to me and ask me for money until you get your house in order. And darn sure, don't act like I'm supposed to be happy to give you my hard-earned money until you get your house in order. Imagine if you gave someone money to pay off their credit cards so they could, say, buy a car to get a job. And then 6 months later, no car, no job, and their credit card is maxed out again. You say, well, what happened? Oh, and they say, I need more money. I maxed out my credit card again because I needed to buy clothes to get a new job. And I need childcare. I can't work if I can't put the baby in daycare. So you say, well, okay. And you pay off the credit card again. And 6 months later, no job, no car, credit card maxed out. You say, what the heck's going on here? What happened? Why aren't you working? And you say, well, I got a job, but they wanted me to work overtime, and I couldn't because that would be too many hours and affect my rental assistance. So I had to quit, which meant the car got repossessed. At what point do you realize you're dumping your money down a bottomless pit? The more you dump in, the more is needed. And it's no one's fault, and it's everyone's fault. Because, as I've said many times, it's not always the people. It's not the people's fault, because right away everybody says, would you take the benefits? I sure would, but it doesn't make it right. Would you take the tax cut? I sure would, but it doesn't make it right. It's not the people all the time. It's the policy. And we act like we're oblivious. If it's our side, we're okay. We just pretend to be oblivious to the bad policy. We just keep dumping our money down this bottomless pit and stay oblivious to it if it's our side that's doing the dumping. When the Republicans are in office, they spend like crazy. When Democrats are in office, they spend like crazy. And we remain oblivious to it. Until a guy like Mark Cuban comes along and says, I'm happy and proud to pay $276 million in taxes. Okay. Okay, Mark. I built a time machine out of a DeLorean. I'm selling it for $100 million. You interested? You seem stupid enough. I'm getting off on a tangent here. What else did I say I was going to talk about? Oh, yeah. These wars. These wars. We are seriously living in some confusing times. We are spending billions in the name of protecting our country. We got one war where the enemy, Russia, just vetoed a UN Security Council resolution reaffirming the ban on putting nuclear weapons in orbit around the Earth. You get that? Russia has a vote on the UN Security Council. They got veto power. I had to look it up. I said, oh, maybe there's a different Russia? Maybe there's another Russia? Nope. Same Russia. Same Russia fighting in Ukraine. They're sitting on the UN Security Council. We're still doing business with them. We're still cooperating on all sorts of things around the world with Russia. People are like, listen, we still want to buy that oil. When all this gets sorted out, we still want to buy that oil. Don't blow up them oil fields, Ukraine. We need that oil. The SWIFT banking I keep telling you about, I don't think they've been removed from the SWIFT banking system. Look it up if you don't know what it is. I mean, this is a really strange way to fight a war. Then you got Israel and Iran and Hamas. Israel and Iran, appear to have finished up pretending to attack one another for a while. Yeah, Israel, hey, they kill an Iranian general. Iran responds by saying, hey, we're about to respond. Here's some missiles and drones. And Israel says, okay, we ain't going to take that. Here's one missile back. This way we can say we responded. And then everybody goes, whew, dodged a bullet there. The last thing we want is conflict in the Middle East. Did I miss a meeting? Did we change the definition of conflict? Saying the last thing we want is a wider conflict in the Middle East is like having a 100-mile-long asteroid head into the Earth and saying the last thing we want now is a bigger asteroid coming in the other direction. I mean, it seems like it's pretty bad as it is. What we got now seems pretty bad in the Middle East. Maybe you need a wider conflict to sort it out and start over in that part of the world. I don't know. I'm just saying. Then we got the Cold War with China. We're basically in the Cold War with China. We need them. They need us. But we're essentially at war with them. They aid Russia. They prop up dictators like Kim in North Korea. They force us to spend billions to protect our interest in that part of the world, in the South China Sea, Taiwan, all of it. All of it. We are at war with them for lack of a better understanding. And yet, TikTok, owned by ByteDance, Byte, B-Y-T-E, Dance, a privately held company based in Beijing. A different Beijing? Nope. The one in China. Now, I don't know how privately held any companies are in China, but it says they're a privately held company in China. But everyone seems to be saying, or under the impression, we're being spied on by China through TikTok. And yet we're having a debate over whether to ban TikTok. You understand what I'm saying? There seems to be a consensus that we are being spied on in this country by China, our enemy, through TikTok. But we don't want to get rid of TikTok, or some people don't want to get rid of TikTok. Do you know what we banned from Japan during World War II? Japanese people. The people. Even if they were American citizens, we locked them up. We put them in internment camps if they were Japanese during World War II. I'm not saying that was the right thing to do. I'm just saying that's what we did back then. Now we can't even agree to ban an app that is spying on us because we don't want to miss out on the next viral dance craze. We are seriously living in some confusing times right now. We got a lot of problems. 99 problems. And Donald Trump is just one. Donald Trump might not even be one if we didn't let him be one. We got a lot of problems. We are living in some confusing times right now. And it certainly does not help to clear up the confusion if we will remain oblivious to anything that makes us feel uncomfortable, or anything that challenges us to think, or anything that disagrees with what we want to agree with. That certainly will not clear up any of this confusion. I do this podcast for therapy. It's therapy for me. I get to get some things off my chest. I don't do it to get rich. I darn sure don't do it to get famous, which is why I'm just happy to be the comparison group guy. And it's fine if it's harder to get listeners doing the show this way. As I've told you in the past, if my goal on this podcast was making money, I sure wouldn't be doing it this way. I sure wouldn't be doing it the hardest way possible to get listeners. So it ain't about that for me. In some weird, crazy, silly, stupid way on my part, I say, I don't know, maybe I'm helping. I don't know. Like I said, it's more for therapy, and it's more because it's fun. But I don't know if it does any good, if it helps, if people want to hear what I'm saying. I have no idea. But I can tell you this. If you help me out, if you share the show, if you follow me on Apple Podcast or Spotify, if you rate the show on Apple Podcast or Spotify, if you help me out, if you think what I'm saying would be helpful to someone you know, it would be much appreciated. And if I do ever make any significant amount of money doing this, you have my word as a Biden. I will donate every dime to charity, with the exception of all of it. You have my vow. Any money I make will be given to charity with the exception of every dime. Now who's happy and proud to contribute? Ooh, look at that. A nice short show because I didn't talk about Trump that much. See? Isn't that better? Thanks for listening. As I say, if you could help me out and share and follow and rate Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, anywhere you get podcasts. It's hot in here. Very hot. I really don't appreciate the fact that when I leave in the morning, I got to put the heat on in the car. When I go out to lunch in the afternoon, I got to put the air conditioning on. When I come home at night, I got to put the heat on again. That don't make no sense. I guess I'm committed. Next episode, I'll have the guest. I hope it'll be interesting. I hope it'll be fun. And I hope you'll tune in. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.